Hello everyone. Do you know, I'm just laughing to myself because I tested this and it worked completely fine, and I tested it more than once and it worked completely fine. So I have just gone on and told everybody on the group to come onto the YouTube channel instead, before the hundreds of messages all start coming through. So let's go and see. If we don't get this working tonight, I'll just do it on another time instead. But it's out of my control, everybody. So I'm just going to look here. Let's see. Let's put, please join me live on my YouTube channel as issues with tech. Okay, I think this probably, we're gonna record it anyway, but I can see 3 people have made it over here. Let's see. I'm just gonna say best laid plans, everybody. Let me just have a look on the Facebook group. I've put it on the Impact Lounge. I'll put it on the 3 to 5 group. Not a lot else I can do. I've sent you all a quick email as well. So let's just check if that's gone through okay. Let's just see. Oh God, I used to get stressed about these sorts of things, but I don't anymore. I'm literally sending an email to people as we speak. So let's send that. If you're watching me sending an email. There we go. Right. It might be better for me to just cut my losses and do it on another night. But you put so much effort into these things. So could you, if you are here, pop a comment. I could got my comments box there. Let's see if anything's coming up. I'm going to have to do that through YouTube as well. So if nothing else, you can learn from somebody who's been doing this sort of thing live for a number of years now. You cannot change things when things don't work. You just have to manage them. So I'm going to have a little look here, my channel, because I can't actually see if anybody's watching. Let's have a look. Does it show me? Does anybody put a comment in? It says I've got 22 viewers. I wonder how I can tell if anybody's watching me. Amanda Goldsmith, thank you. Sam Boyd, great. Okay, well, I'm going to carry on. So anybody that joins me, apologies. This is streaming through YouTube. It should have worked fine, and I did a little bit of a different thing today, but I need to be able to show you my screen as well. And when I went on, even though I tested it and it had the little countdown, I clicked on it and it just said won't stream. So I know I'm probably going to get lots of people saying, I clicked on your link and it didn't work. I know. Okay, but I'm here. Okay, and it's going to be recorded. And so the main thing to say is hello. And also, this is a complete freebie. Nobody is paying me to do this. This was me having one of my moments where I went, I just want to do some free training for you all. I'll do it at 7:30 at night because that fits in with Little's bedtimes. So I am delighted if you've joined me. Don't forget it's a freebie. Thank you so much for I say you should have got like an email or a notification on the group, but out of my control, tech issues. All right. Okay. It's at 175 waiting to come in, says Zoe. Woo woo. Great. Now able to see me, says Judith. Hi from Devon, says Joe. Close it down and re-enter. Yeah, so Joe, what I was explaining there, you will get a little email from me. I went to click on live, all set up. You can see, look what I've had to do here. That actually says impact because I've had to jump on a different way, and it was from my impact call the other day, so I'll get rid of that. Okay, everyone, let's get started. So if you are just finding me now, I'll say this once more and I won't say it anymore after this. This is a free session that I'm running. So no one's paying me, completely free bonus. The link that I set up in order for me to do it through YouTube, when I clicked on it, it said won't stream, won't work. So literally within 2 minutes, I've sent out an email to everybody and updated 2 Facebook groups and found an alternative way to come on. So I'm feeling good about that. Right, so tonight's session, which I promised my husband will be 45 minutes, it certainly won't now, but I'll go through things and we'll start sharing. Great. So Judith said she put it in, but you should have all had an email, okay, because that'll come through as well. But well done, all those people who did it in a slightly different way. Okay, I am going to show you what is on my screen. And later on, as I say, I might have to just reiterate what was happening there. So we are going to be looking at how counting fits in with subitizing when we're teaching, sorry, things popping up on my phone, when we're teaching number sense. And actually I'll come back on because I know there'll be people still finding me now. What I want you to think about is that it is training, but you are all pathway and impact members. Now, some of you will be very experienced and been with me a long time, and some of you be brand shiny new, like you literally joined even today because you saw there was going to be some training. Now, the stuff that we do tonight is me highlighting what we need to know and why we need to know it. And the how to learn all of the tools that I'm going to say you need is in your membership. It's in Pathway. And if you're in Impact, you've got all of Pathway and more as well. All right. So I want you to hold on to that idea. And I'm going to describe it as the why, which is why do we need this? And why do we need the subject knowledge and so forth that we do in the understanding? Then there's the how, of the kind of how do we do it and why do we do it in that way. And then there's the what, is the activities. And something I'll mention straight away is I'm going to do some posts this week, and with respect to people, we have got to stop saying, can I have some great ideas for? Can someone share their planning on? Because that would be like a doctor coming onto a medical website and saying, can someone give me some ideas for treating this skin condition or this really serious illness? I hope that would freak all of us out. You'd be like, why are they asking for ideas of how to treat it? Why aren't they saying, help me understand the condition? Tell me the things I need to know to have the expertise in how to do this. That is what we need to be like as well. Okay, so hello everyone. Yeah, it is. I had, for anybody just finding me, I went to go live stream. It wouldn't work, even though it said it would, and I tested it earlier. So I have sent out an email, sent out some Facebook things, and we're in the right place now. I'll edit these little bits out when we do it later. So it is great to have you on. Don't panic. It's free training. It's like, bring a cuppa. I haven't got a cup with me today, but I have got a glass of water, probably best in the circumstances. Okay, so let's head over here. And I've got some more information for you as well, particularly if you are a newbie to EY Maths. So first of all, let's pop into the chat box here. How many P's can you see? What do you notice? If you're a subitizing expert, that how many won't mean that you automatically count them. What do you notice? What do you see? So do that first. And that will be a really, really good way in. What is your brain paying attention to? Anna's worked out the chat. Fantastic. It should be easy, Anna, as long as you're logged into YouTube. So welcome, everybody. And I've got 1 thumbs down and 3 thumbs up. Sorry to the person who's given me a thumbs down, and I hope that was an accident. So can you see there? What do you see when you look at the P's? Because that's a good start to this evening. Sam says 3 and 3. Pam says 3 and 3. Kate says 3 and 3. Can you look at them a different way? Because this very much links into what we're going to be looking at. And this will be old hat to lots of you. So what I want to show you first, to give it some context of me coming on tonight, is for those of you that are new to EY Maths training, there are 3 levels of membership in EY Maths. So it's sort of give you an overview here. We have Pathway, which is our foundation level support. And that is, we have a termly number sense challenge, which is coming up. And that links very much to what we're doing tonight. We have a lot of members on tonight who are what's called Impact. And then just to confuse you further, there is a level above Impact called Greater Impact. And many of those members are on tonight as well. And in order to get access to Greater Impact, you have to graduate from this course here. But I just wanted you to be aware of the fact that there are these 3 sort of stages in EY Maths, and depending on what you want to achieve with your journey with us, knowing that they're there will be helpful. Okay, so what we're going to have a look at first then, so let me move some things out of the way here, is tonight's training, as I said earlier there, is about the why. Why do we need to understand about counting and subitizing before we can plan and before we can teach? You've got the how to do it in your Pathway library, and then the what is the activities that we will use, and you'll get some of that as well in the library to help you. But the what, the activities you use, are the easiest bit once you have the why and the how in place. If you are a Pathway member, and even if you're not a Pathway member, you've all got the Foundation Number Sense course as well in your EY Maths library. So start there to learn the how to go with what we're talking about tonight. And then I want you to watch out for our Termly Number Sense Challenge, which is starting next month. And if you're in Pathway and you're in Impact, you get this free of charge included in your membership, and it will help you to achieve some of the things that we're talking about on this session as well tonight. It's going to be focused on teaching numbers 0 to 10. So I'm just going to have a little look at the chat box there. And I think we've got quite a lot of people on. I can't see how many people are on there, but let's see. Oh, 140. Fantastic. So apologies, anybody who got a bit lost finding me. It was a tech issue, and hopefully everybody is here now and you can catch up later as well. All right, so let's go back over here. We've just been looking at our aims, and here is a pictorial version of a message that you will hear from me a lot. And this is another way of looking at this. If you've come from a place like I have, and I think we probably all come from this place, where you think that teaching maths is about the provision of activities, we need to move away from that. It's completely understandable why we think that, but it's the bit above the water, it's the what. And focusing on the provision of activities for maths when you don't have the why and the how in place will not work. So if you've moved from being someone who is searching through the scheme and searching online and looking for activities and asking on groups, and that awful feeling we have of I just need some good ideas, the reason you're feeling like that is because we don't have the why and we don't have the how. And when you have that, everything will make so much more sense, honestly. I'm just going to see if I can put up my chat box so I can see if you're asking anything at the same time. So I hope that makes sense. What we are going to then do is have a look at this idea of giving you a toolbox of skills. So if I go back here, we're going to have a look at what counting is and what subitizing is. Incredibly important. There are going to be people on this call tonight who know this stuff inside out, and I'm one of them. And yet every time we go through it, we get greater clarity, and we realize that this question and this area of thinking is absolutely the most important in terms of our number sense teaching. So never ever feel like you've moved beyond this. Never ever feel like you don't need to ask questions around this. It took me a really long time to work out how counting fitted in with subitizing, and I've been studying subitizing now for about 6 or 7 years, and I worked for a long time on work trying to answer this question that we've got tonight, with how does counting fit in with this? Now I understand what subitizing is, and you of course may be on your journey to still learning what subitizing is, and we need to ask this question over and over again. We then need, look at that middle one, we need to understand, why do children need either counting or subitizing? I don't want you to think of counting and subitizing as the aim of what we're teaching. We teach counting and subitizing so that children can do things. And those things are to do with number sense, and they're to do with addition and subtraction and multiplication and division and fractions, and this fluency that they absolutely need to secure to be good at mathematics. And the reason we need them to be good at mathematics is to live their lives successfully. So all the work I do in EY Maths is looking beyond the skill we're teaching to the purpose of the skill. And then I want to give you a toolbox, and I'm going to give you this toolbox here as a checklist as to what you need in your toolbox. So EY Maths is not about replacing a scheme. EY Maths is not instead of White Rose, instead of Power Maths, and it's completely separate to that. It's all about giving you the skills. So whatever approach you choose to use, you use it with really good subject knowledge, really good pedagogical knowledge, and a really good sense of the why and the how. So does that make sense to everyone? I'm just going to come back off the share and feel like I'm sort of communicating with people a bit better. Does that, pop some things in the chat box, does that make sense to you? Where are you in this journey so far? Are you someone who's been with me a while and you think, yep, that how and that why, the why first, then the how, makes complete sense. You're just learning to do it? Or is this the first time that you've begun to think about the fact, oh my goodness, I'm focusing on activities and I really need help to understand that stuff beneath? And think about that doctor example of like, we wouldn't want someone just to walk into Boots and start handing out prescriptions. They would really need to understand the human body and understand the conditions. And of course, it's exactly the same for us. So let me know, say chat box gone a bit quiet, let me know if that makes sense to you. And let's go back over here. Probably a little bit of a delay, isn't there? But I'll keep an eye on that. All right, so in our toolbox, I want you to see this as almost a checklist. And what I want you to do tonight is to think, which ones of these areas do you need to still work on? Maybe it's all of them. If it's all of them, where are you going to start first? And every single thing that you need to learn that I've listed here, you will find either now or now and in the future, you will find the information you need in Pathway, particularly in that foundation number sense course, okay? So this is what we're going to have a look at. Children need concept images of numbers. So that means that they need to not just see the digit 3 in their head. If they're thinking about it as standing for a quantity or representing a quantity, they need to see it as 3 things, because then they can see it's got 2 things and 1 thing in it, and 1 and 1 and 1 and so forth. That is learning that I will teach you in the Pathway Library. And they need to learn to connect that to those digits. You need to understand the counting principles. We're going to have a look at those. You need to understand what counting for ordinality means. You need to understand what counting for cardinality means. You need to understand perceptual subitizing and conceptual subitizing. So I wonder, you're watching this, maybe you're right at the beginning of your journey and you go, oh my goodness, I don't even know what some of those terms mean. That's everyone when they start. No one is born knowing any of this. That just means you're at the beginning of your journey with us. Do you know what some of these things mean? But if you were asked to talk about it, you might find it hard to explain, in which case that means you don't understand it as well as you need to yet. Or are you further on your journey and you can look back and think, I didn't used to know what this meant, but I do now, and I am learning to use it in my practice, because everything on here, and I'm going to do some subitizing here and say there's 6 things on here, you need in your toolbox. So look at the way the arrows are pointing. So I hope this makes sense. Do not beat yourself up about not knowing something, but do beat yourself up if you're not willing to go on a journey to learn it, and learn it with us, because that's the best way to learn anything and everything. So I hope that makes sense. Thank you for all the comments coming up, and I will keep an eye on those as well. So let's have a look at what counting is. Really important, everybody. And in answer to, are you going to get the slides, I will put this in the Pathway Library and I will give you a copy of the slides as well. So I hope that helps. But counting is a human created system. Counting is not natural. Everything I'm going to tell you in this slide, you will know is true, but you may not have thought about it before. Counting has rules that have to be taught. So rules about what the symbols look like, rules about the order of the symbols, rules about the way counting works. And when we look at the principles, you'll understand that even more. Humans successfully lived and still live for tens or hundreds of thousands of years, however long people have been around, without counting systems and without digits and without numerals. And they lived very successfully in using, solving numerical problems without digits. So I want you to remember, this is fully grown humans with very good brains. Yeah, so this is something that has enhanced our lives, but we don't need it in the way that we may think we do. Our current system, which is the Hindu-Arabic system, was developed in very recent times in terms of how long humans have been around, but we've had many different number systems, and those systems have gone through many forms and iterations. And of course, we've got things like Roman numerals and Egyptian counting systems and number systems and Mayans, and you might know about lots and lots of different ones. But the idea of place value that we use now, and based on base 10, is a very, very modern invention, and it's very abstract. There's a consistent use of the Hindu-Arabic 0 to 9 digit use across the world now, but there are still other number systems And there are still other ways of writing that base 10 system. So if you, for example, use an Arabic number system, it's still base 10, but it is different symbols. Every language in the world uses different words for the number names. The numbers are still the numbers. They still do exactly the same thing, but they're called completely different things. And some of them have language that relates to the base 10, not tend, as I'm written on there, base 10 structure, and some less so. And these are things that people, to my mind, get quite tied up with about whether a number system says 10-1, 10-2, 10-3, and so forth. And when they don't, that it confuses children. I have not found that as long as children learn numbers through concept images. They get very confused if they learn it only through digits and through words. And that's something you will learn with me if you haven't already. Counting makes sense of numbers both in their cardinal and ordinal form. So numbers can be seen as nominal, just being a label. So I always say something like the number 7 bus. It's not the 7th bus. There's not 7 buses. They haven't got 7 people on it. It's just its name. That's nominal. Cardinal is the how manyness. And ordinality is to do with number order. And there's a couple of aspects to that as well. So I want you to think at this point, how much have you and your team thought about what counting is? And I hope everything I've said there makes a lot of sense. Now we're going to have a think about subitizing. So remember, this is training, but this is more like an overview of what you need to know. So if anybody's thinking, gosh, feels like it's going quick, it's not meant to be in-depth training, that's in pathway for you, and you'll get more and more from me as we go through the year. So subitizing comes from the Latin word subito, meaning to arrive suddenly. This idea that when you look at an amount, you can instantly see how many it is. I'll just do my corrections as I go along. It is a natural human skill. It is something that babies show us they can make sense of. And I would like to take that further and say that it is something that our ancestors used and humans still use in the world very extensively today, and we all use on a daily basis. We just may not be aware we're using it. You can understand amounts, see equivalents, compare amounts without any need for number names or symbols. And this is something, again, we explore in great depth. A young child can easily understand that one quantity is more than another or the same as another, and they haven't got any number names yet, and they don't understand the words you're using. So again, let this tick over in your mind, let this make sense. We learn to label those amounts with numerical names and symbols. So we almost take the idea of the previous slide, the rules that humans created, and we learn to attach them to these things that we already understand. That's a biggie in developing number sense. We all subitize daily, but the problem is because the only tool that we're aware of in our toolbox to find out how many, the only one we've been taught to pay attention to is counting. So as adults, I'll come off the share here and show you. As adults, you'll be aware we do this thing where we, excuse me, we'll be like, trying to count things like this. Yeah. And what we don't do is pull back and think, do you know what? Actually, I can see a 3 there and I can see a 3 there. So that's 6 and there's one more there and that's 7. And that's what subitizing enables you to do as an adult. It enables you to reconnect with something you already can do really, really well. So lots and lots of food for thought here. The next bit is subitizing is not to do with ordinality and cardinality. It's only to do with cardinality. So it's about when numbers are behaving cardinally, which is this idea about the how manyness. So you can review all these things and you can ask me any questions you like. If you're in pathway, you can come on the 3 to 5 group anytime and ask questions. If you're in impact or greater impact, I'm available to you all over the place every day, so you can ask about this. You need to understand perceptual and conceptual subitizing. Perceptual is the ability to see a whole amount instantly. There is an awful lot of messages out there which are inaccurate and confusing and misleading. I went on some training recently and they implied that young children can see up to 3 and then they can see up to 5 and adults can see up to 6 things. I personally have not found any evidence of that. When items are in a random arrangement, humans tend to only be able to subitize perceptually up to 3 items. When you then put them in a pattern, such as the 4 on a die, excuse me, or you use things like 10 frames, you can perceptually subitize very, very high quantities of things. So please, one, be very careful about dice patterns. I won't go into that too much, but really unhelpful to relate subitizing to dice patterns, because unless you can see within that dice pattern what else it's showing you, you are really just recognizing almost a symbol. So again, that's something we can talk about another time. But let's challenge this idea that humans can see randomly subitize amounts of, say, 5 and 6. I'll show you, and you can try this in front of you, but I'll show you evidence that that isn't true, but it isn't a problem either. And the idea that, for me, that is a problem is that messages out there almost imply that you cannot perceptually subitize large amounts, where you absolutely can when you use 10 frames and therefore place value. And I'll show you examples of that. Again, even more in the training. So conceptual subitizing is amazing. It's the ability to do two things. One, it might be, I can see there's 3 and 3 there, so I know there's 3 and 3 and 6, so it must be 6. Or I can see 6 there because I know it was 3. I saw 3 and 3. So you're kind of doing the same thing, but from two sides. You could see 6 and see the 2 3s in it, or you could see 2 3s and justify it was 6. Can you see then that I think actually we'll get rid of I'm doing lots of editing here while I'm live on here. Can you see that that is the foundation then of your addition and subtraction? If you know what 6 looks like and you know there's a 4 and a 2 in it, then if you subtract 4 from 6, there'll be 2 left. If you need 6 and you've only got 2, and you know there's a 4 and a 2 in 6, you know you need 4 more. Multiplication and division, of course, are just forms of that, but dealing with equal amounts. Okay, so again, and this is why it leads into fractions and so forth. You cannot learn to be fluent in number sense, as far as I'm concerned. With everything I've learned and the life that I led, failing at school, what was missing was my ability to understand that numbers, when they represented quantities, could be seen, and seen as images on 10 frames in my head, and decomposed into parts, equal parts, unequal parts, and so forth. And the idea about number bonds being 2 numbers joined together, or number facts when you've got multiple numbers joined together. Does all that make sense, everyone, before I go on? And can you hear the passion with which I'm sharing this? Because all I do now, and for the last 3 years, is think about this stuff and work on this stuff in early years every single day. And for 11 years preceding that, I was a maths consultant right across early years, key stage 1 and 2 into secondary. So that knowledge, that what I'm using now, is all the devastation I saw of this lack of understanding on older children is what really leads my, my sense of passion now for this. So I hope you feel the same and this is making sense. Okay, so let's have a look here. Counting in action. When we are taught to count, we are taught to not look at the whole amount, but to look at the whole amount in parts. And typically, of course, we start by looking at things in ones. So we are taught to think about one strawberry and another strawberry and another strawberry, and use number names in order and only touch each thing once. So I could go 1, 2, 3, but because there is an order irrelevance rule in counting, I could go 1, 2, 3, or I could go 1, 2, 3. You can count them in any order. Counting doesn't make sense of the fact that the human brain actually doesn't look at things individually first. It looks at things as a whole. And of course, 3 is the name for all of these strawberries. And if you've only got counting in your toolbox, 1, 2, 3, when we say to children how many, they count them again. And we say, but there's 3. And lots of you will know, I've said this so many times, they're thinking this one is 3. Of course they're thinking that one is 3. And how strange is it then if we go 1, 2, 3, and that one that was 1 now becomes 3. So again, these are things that we'll look at in much more depth in Pathway, and you've got the training to help you there. Then let's have a look at counting linked to the sorts of things that early humans and children and we use. So children will often hold up 3 fingers to show us something. Now, there's that whole image is something they will often do way before they know the number 3. way before they can say the number 3. But can you see the logic that each strawberry connects to a finger? There's a one-to-one correspondence there, and which is going to come back and be important again in a moment in subitizing. There's a one-to-one correspondence in the tallies. But of course, if you can only use counting from your toolbox, 1, 2, 3, this finger is 3, this finger is 2, this finger is 1, or if we count the other way, 1, 2, 3. It's really hard to understand the 3-ness of 3, and yet children will show us they understand this way before they have number names and can count. So notice that in your provision. This as well makes a lot of sense to children, the idea that each line represents a thing, but not if they haven't been allowed to focus on the idea of subitizing. Otherwise, it's 1, 2, 3, and it's the third one is going to be 3 as opposed to the whole thing. This one I wanted to show because something I haven't thought about until recently. Can you see it doesn't make sense that 3 objects would be represented by 1 symbol? These 3 objects are represented by 3 symbols. 3 objects represented by 3 symbols, even though they're joined at the bottom there. But 3 objects being represented by 1 symbol, and if you added another strawberry, so if I do this, that would turn to number 4, but it'd still be 1 symbol, even though you've increased the amount by 1. We've now got 4 things, and it's still only 1 symbol. So these are things to think about, how confusing this is for children. When we subitize, we do what our brain naturally does. We don't have to teach subitizing, they can already do it. What we have to do is teach them to label it with the number names and associate it with the digits that create the numerals. That's what our job is. But subitizing is natural. They see the whole amount. And young children will be able to see from a very young age that 2 strawberries and 3 strawberries aren't the same amount of strawberries. And if they love strawberries and there's 2 plates and one's got 3 and one's got 2, they will head towards the plate with 3 of them. It makes a lot more sense when we look here at this idea about calling this one thing, this group, and it's called 3. It makes a lot of sense that it attaches to these 3 digits here and these 3 lines here in the tally. And in time, because we've called it 3, the idea that there's a symbol for 3, just like there is a word to associate with their name, they know that the amount of letters in their name doesn't correspond with their name. Their name is like a picture of who they are. And I often use the example of apple. Apple is the word that represents a thing. It's completely irrelevant what the letters are doing. It's just what we've decided we're going to call that concept. So I hope that's food for thought as well. Again, remember the teaching of how to understand all this is in your library. So go and have a look. But this is something that's really important. On our little toolbox here, I said you need to understand the counting principles, and I'm going to take you through in this short session and show you that in order to make sense of these counting principles, it is actually subitizing that's going to allow you to achieve what is on this list. And I hope that is really exciting for you. Maybe it's exciting because you've never thought about it before like this, and maybe it's exciting because someone's putting pressure on you and saying, our children need to show that they can do all this, and you're feeling compromised because you're thinking, what about this subitizing thing? So let's have a look through this together. The one-to-one principle, there is a distinct counting word to match each of the items counted. Now, what I'm going to do here is just go back. When we look at things like strawberries, if I get rid of that bit around the outside, and we talk about 1, and then we talk about another 1, and then we talk about another 1, and we always did this before we knew about subitizing. And if I move that one out of the way, when we had, let's do it again like this. So here's 1. When we add another 1, the name for that amount changes from 1 to 2. And now when we add another 1, the name for that amount is called 3. But can you see you've still got the 1s in there? And you've also got a 2 and a 1 or a 2 and a 1. You can see it in as many ways like we can do what we call move it to prove it. There's the 2 and the 1 in the 3. So you are still doing this idea. Let's do that again. This was a massive wow bomb for me, and I had to work it out for myself. But how many things have we got? 1. Add another 1. How many things have we got? 2. Add another 1. How many things have we got? 3. But I'm labeling the whole group. We'll come to the part later where actually the idea of saying 1, 2, 3 becomes meaningful. But actually when they say 1, 2, 3, they're understanding that that 1 is talking about the whole group. Then the 2 is how many we've counted so far, and the 3 is how many we've counted so far. And that is born through subitizing, no doubt in my mind. The stable order principle, the list of words must be consistent. So what that means is we must say the rules of our counting system in English are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and so forth. You can't say 1, 3, 4, 5, 6. You can't mix the words around. We often get children who consistently miss a number name out because they're still getting to grips with these weird words. There's too many things going on. That stable order principle I'm going to come to in a moment, that comes from doing rhymes and songs and stories where they hear the number names of their first language used a lot, and then they start to hear what sounds right. The cardinal principle, be careful of things like the NCETM that talks about counting and cardinality. Cardinal principle is, rather than thinking the final word, the idea that there is a number that represents the whole group. In counting, it is the final number you say. In subitizing, it is the whole amount is called 3, or the whole amount is called 2. But as you saw there, we can link these two things together. That's called 3. That's called 1. Add another one, now it's called 2. Add another one, now it's called 3. Can you see that actually makes sense then of 1, 2, 3 counting? How many? Well, 3, because I'd learned to label the whole amount first. The abstraction principle, you can count any collection of objects, be it real or imaginary. I would take that as well to think about the fact that when you're counting or you want to find out how many of something that you can't see. So never mind about real or imaginary, because I don't think children have an issue with that. We might have pictures of make-believe things and pictures of real things, pictures of drawings or actual objects, so concrete and pictorial. But of course, the abstraction principle is the idea that you can count things like sounds, and you can count things you can imagine. So don't just think of imaginary as being a fantasy or non-real creature or non-real thing. It's about what's in your head. And I'll come back to that in a moment, because counting is definitely the most efficient skill in my mind when you cannot see something. I would use subitizing when I can see it most of the time, but counting when I can't. And I'll show you an example of that. The order irrelevance principle. So I think that this one and the cardinal principle are the two that are the most difficult when it comes to counting, and almost impossible if you haven't learned to subitize. So order irrelevance says in counting that I can go 1, 2, 3, or I can go 1, 2, 3, or I can go 1, 2, 3. I can count them in any order. If you've only got counting in your toolbox, like I showed earlier, if that's 1 and that's 2 and that's 3, you think this one's number 3. So if I count them in another order, 1, 2, 3, the 3's now become a 1. That doesn't make sense at all. Whereas when you can subitize, 1, 2, 3. Let's count this one first this time. 1, 2, 3. And although I sound like I'm counting, remember what I'm actually doing, because I'm doing how many. I'm not just saying that one is 1. I understand that this one is 1 as well, and together they are 2. And I understand that one is 1 as well, and together they are 3. It makes no difference what order I count them in. So you can see there that it's the subitizing that is enabling me to not get confused about order relevance, and it's the subitizing that's enabling me to understand that the last word that I say is the label for the group. So I'm going to pop off the share again for a minute and see what's happening, because these are massive, big deal, huge. And it's rather than, oh, do I do counting or do I do subitizing? What I want to show you in this training is subitizing is going to make sense of counting. And then you have a counting tool in your toolbox and a subitizing tool in your toolbox, and you get to decide when to use which to solve the problem in front of you with complete understanding. So we'll build on that in this session. So Hayley says the more she listens, the more everything makes sense. Purple Fox, give me a thumbs up. That's great. So explaining number sensors, Zoe, and we're getting so many great examples on the group of very, very little children, your own little children, as in you're the mums and dads, saying, there was a little girl yesterday said about the Wrexham football team, said, oh, they got 3 and then they got 3, so they got 6. So that idea as well of picturing the score and thinking there's a 3 and a 3 and it equals a 6, you can see how this is the beginning of real fluency in addition. And this child was really, really young. We're seeing children as young as 2 and 3 showing the most incredible number sense. So it's, be very excited, everybody. So let's move on from this then. So I've said a lot of this already, so we can whiz through these bits of slides, but subitizing makes sense of counting. Look, 1, add another 1, 2, add another 1, 3, add another 1, 4. And then if I said to you, how many 2s, you could move it to prove it. You could say, well, I know what a 2 looks like. Oh, there's a 2, and there's a 2, and they're inside the 4. How many 3s? Oh, look, there's a 3. And there isn't another 3, but there's a 3 and a 1. And the idea that, therefore, this number is 1 more than 3, and that if you have 3 and you need 4, you would add 1 more, and if you had 4 and you subtracted 3 or subtracted 1, you'd have the other part left over. So all of this makes sense, and nobody I've ever seen has gone through the counting principles and talked about this in this way. So this, as I say, has taken me years to get to this, and I hope it is lovely for you to get a bit of a shortcut and then really think about these things. So the last bit I want to talk about in the session tonight, and to really think about counting's role, is the counting principles are only to do with cardinality. So cardinality is just the posh name or the posh version of saying how many. And we need to remember that a number doesn't have to denote how many. That is just cardinality. A number can denote order, only order, and a number can denote a label and be nothing to do with an amount of things or an order. So this is where we always start off with the Teaching Essential Number Sense training about how important nominality, ordinality, and cardinality are. So we had a look here, and for example, you can see again, you can do what do you see, what do you notice, and you can start to reason about that and link it back. When you look at this slide, link it back to those principles. But what I want us to have a look at here is that counting is an incredibly important skill in developing ordinality. So not only are children going to be hearing about this, but I want you to actively use what I'm going to call counting for ordinality right from birth, alongside the developing subitizing, and you're going to bring the two things together, and then you're going to help them make sense of counting for cardinality. So again, you might need to listen to this again a few times and ask a few questions, but you'll all understand this. Here's first prize, here's second prize, here's third prize. This is nothing to do with how many. There aren't 2 cups for the second prize. There aren't 3 cups for the third prize. It's the order. And what's nice about this image as well is it doesn't actually go the first one on the left and then the second and the third and like that. It's this idea about the height, and it's to do with the first position, the second position, the third position. Same when we line our children up. So we've got this child, in fact, it would be the other way around, wouldn't it? Let me get rid of that because that's going to confuse things. So this child would be first in the queue, second in the queue, third in the queue. And you know what happens. You go 1, 2, 3. And what does this child say here? I'm not 3, I'm 4. Because, of course, they've got the sense of nominality because they're thinking about you're calling them 3. And as far as they're concerned, another name for them is their age, because they'll say things like, I'm Jamie and I'm 4, and you didn't even ask them. So you've got here number 1, number 2, number 3. Number 3 is not 3 children. They're the third child. So this is really important, and children are hearing this. Suddenly this 3, it's not the label for me and my age. It's not 3 things. It's the order that I'm in. This is really confusing. So then we've got more things to do with ordinality, the idea of the ordinality of the rules that humans have created. So we've got, here's a number track, here's a number line, here's a number line that is vertical. A number line is much more complicated because we measure the end of a space. This is the space and this is the measurement here, but we use these in real life a lot as we get older. Number tracks are much easier because you actually measure the space. But can you see this number track has got an issue? And I always show this one because on a number track you shouldn't have 0 because it's supposed to measure the amount of things. And of course the idea here that the first space with 1 is going to be 1 thing, 2 things, and along like this. But instead of having 6 things, it's going to be the 6th thing. And we've got the idea that 4 comes between 3 and 5, and that 9 comes before 10. And of course, that's only if you're counting in ones. Then we've got number lines that are circular in this case, and in this case with time, we're going back to a much older, before base 10 was used. We've got a base 11, base 12 here, and I said 11, base 12, based on the imperial system. So when we get to 12, we go back to 1. But of course, here it is, it's a number line, and it follows the same rules until we get here. This is a speedometer in the car, and is a good reminder, again, of a curved number line, but also look, it's going up in increments of 20. This one, so it's children are seeing these things all around them, and it's good for us to have a think about them ourselves as well. So ordinality is really, really important. Ordinality is confusing because we've got first, second, third, and first, second, third is an order, not 1 thing, 2 things, 3 things. Also, we've got these numbers that have an order. So in any language around the world, you'd use these digits now. You may use them alongside another number system. But of course, the words you use, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so forth, I'm just speaking that in English. So I need to learn those words, and I need those words in order to subitize, because I know how many that is. And if I just do a bit of trickery here, and oh, she says, and didn't do that very well. Let's just do that. And we might know that that's the same amount, but we don't know what it's called yet. I need the number names in order to label what I see. I know that amount and that amount are the same. If you do this, I know that amount is more than that amount, but I don't know what it's called yet. And of course, we've got the added complication that it's also called strawberries. So we've got an amount and we've got a thing. Hence why we tend to stick to very low cognitive load, things like counters. But what I want to move you just here towards the end is this is what we need to be doing lots of. And if you're in Impact, you know I talk about this a huge amount. We need to be singing songs with our children and doing rhymes and action games and reading stories that have numbers in them in order, forwards and backwards, not just labeling amounts, not just talking about how many or what do we see and labeling them in terms of subitizing, because if we're looking in a book and saying, what do we see here? And we talk about the strawberries, we tend to lean towards, I mean, quite rightly, depending on what you're doing, that there's 3 strawberries there and 2 strawberries here. But this slide is about just saying those number names in order, singing them in order, clapping them, and getting a feel for whatever the first language of that child is, get a familiarity with those words. So when we say this is called 3, and this is called 2, they've already got those words in their vocabulary. They're just joining the word to the concept. So this is something that will keep you sane. I've got what time is it, Mr. Wolf there. We've got the idea about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the fish alive. We've got, you know, the bears in the bed. I mean, just look at the bears there. Can you see as well, you are not counting those bears. And because of the arrangement that I've put them in, I imagine you can see, for example, there's 2 small bears, 2 larger bears, there's 3 bears and 1 bear. The idea of just going 1, 2, 3, 4, you would miss out so much about what's inside 4 there. So I hope that makes sense as well. So I'm just going to come back on. I've got one or two more things to share with you, but is that making sense? I've gone slightly over because I was a bit late coming on, wasn't I, with the problems there. Does this make sense to you? Is this stuff that even if you know it really well, what we've got basically is subitizing from birth, counting for ordinality from birth, rhymes, songs, stories, moving up together. Children do know what the amounts are, and then we're joining the words to the amounts so they can say, oh, look, there's 3 and there's a 2 and a 1 in it, and so forth. And then that makes sense of counting. So the final part to this is, okay, so when, is there a time where actually we should be counting, and what makes sense? So what I'm going to show you here is I would say there absolutely is a time that counting makes sense. And it is when, for example, here you hear sounds. So if you were hearing a drum beating or a musical instrument or a clap, very difficult to subitize that. You could, but it'd be much, much easier and a better use of your tools to, as you heard the sounds, you counted along. And what subitizing does is it enables the child to understand that the last number in the count represents all of the drum beats they've heard so far. When you're turning the pages in a book, very, very difficult. Again, subitizing would be impossible. It's not the right tool. As you're turning the pages, you're counting, and you know that when you get to the last number in your count, that's how many pages you've turned. And these cars here, the cars are going past, or something is moving past you and it's disappeared out of sight, whether or not it keeps putting its little hood up and down, and you would be counting those cars because they've moved, they've gone. But can you see that the principle of what we're talking about here is that the child would understand that the last number in the count represented the whole group, and that's come from their subitizing knowledge. So that is what we've looked at tonight. All of those areas that we've looked at, we haven't done training on them tonight. What we've done is said we need all these things in our toolbox, and all of you have got access to everything you need already in your pathway library, and if you're in Impact, even more. But we will look at these more and more and more, and particularly with the new the challenge coming up next month, which is going to be focused on 0 to 10. Just keep an eye in your email boxes about that. And I've also then got, some of the Impact members have seen this already, and I put a bit of this on the 3 to 5 group for those of you in Pathway. I have created a sort of flow diagram here, starting with noticing from a very young child and taking us up through perceptual subitizing with examples, through to using 5 frames. And again, the Foundation Number Sense course will teach you how to do all of this. But then it also takes you up through counting for ordinality, and then comes down through conceptual subitizing, which is the beginnings of calculation. So I will do a video that goes with this to explain exactly what it means and how it works. And also what we need to do then is link it to parts of the training and images to make sure you know exactly how to use it. So everyone, I will just reiterate in case you came on midway, I spent quite a lot of time today learning how to stream the YouTube, got it all set up, went to click on it, and it just said will not stream. So I immediately sent an email to everybody. I immediately put notes on both Facebook groups as well. So that's the best I could do. And then I came onto Ecamm and did the streaming through here instead. So I hope if you're feeling a little bit frustrated when you hear that, you'll think, actually, you know, I tell you what, the duck was calm, but I didn't even have the little legs going underneath. I'm so used to all this now, you just have to manage it as best you can. So if you did miss some of this, it's all recorded, and I'm so grateful for you coming on at this time of night, spending time with me. And don't forget, this was a freebie just because I love what I do, and I just want to give you all as much support as you can to continue doing a brilliant job. So Joe, yes, this will be in your Pathway library as a resource, and you'll get that handout as well. Thank you, Hayley. So I hope that has been helpful, everyone. And, you know, for those of you who are, especially my Greater Impact members that are so far along the road, we hear these things and we think, oh my goodness, I must never lose sight of how important it is for me to look at what I'm providing and say, you know, if I go back to that, let's just finish on that toolbox. If this is your toolbox, and we use a checklist here in the nicest possible way, where are your areas for some time and contemplation here, and some depth of you thinking, I need to revisit some ideas here, I need to come on and ask some questions? That is the amazing thing about a membership. We're not going anywhere, we're here for you. So I hope, as I say, that has been super useful. I'll try not to click on the wrong thing because I've done pretty well up until now. But otherwise, have a great rest of the week, everyone. And whether you are in Pathway, you can go on the 3 to 5 group and ask any questions that you want. If you're in Impact and Greater Impact, you don't need any encouragement because you know we are there for each other all the time. We're always talking about everything. So do fire away. Don't sit on anything. And no question is too small, and certainly not silly. You're only silly if you don't ask the question. So take care. See if there's anything. Yeah, I think... Oh, great. Yeah, I thought I'd seen a question, but it was from earlier on. All right, take care, everyone, and have a good rest of the week. See you soon.